President Obama, even though he reduced the number of troops in Afghanistan, he decided to halt the complete withdrawal of U.S. troops until 2017, partly because of the situation we see there on the ground now. How are American troops getting Afghan forces ready to take on and handle the Taliban on their own?
Thanks, and what we're seeing right now is that despite all the training and support mechanisms that U.S. and foreign forces have tried to put in for Afghan security forces, consistently what we're seeing is Afghan security forces being unable to hold their ground when they're fighting alone. That's what seems to have happened right now in Sangin, and a couple of months ago that's exactly what also happened in the northern city of Kunduz, where left to their own devices the Afghan security forces weren't able to match the tactics of the Taliban.
And Omar, you know, when you look at the string of attacks we've seen recently, not just what we're seeing there this week, but also, as you mentioned, Kunduz and the Spanish embassy in Kabul being attacked by a Taliban suicide bomber recently, it does appear that the Taliban has gotten more brazen. There is supposed to be more peace talks between the Taliban and Afghan government in January. Do we know if that is going to make much of a difference, do you think?
Yeah, at this moment, I think the Taliban strategy is moving towards keeping the pressure on the government security forces and highlighting again and again the security vulnerabilities of the current government. Now, on the side of the Afghan government, there seems to be a serious division within the government about how to take forward the process of peace talks, because there seems to be at least one faction which is being headed by President Ghani, which thinks that in light of the security forces' inability to restore order, probably the best way forward is to engage in peace talks, while others, including the security establishment of the country and the intelligence services, seem to be opposed still to engaging the Taliban in peace talks.
But here's the thing. You mentioned that the Afghan government, there's division within the Afghan government, but what makes it more complicated is the fact there's also division within the Taliban itself. The Taliban appears to be especially fractured after the death of Mullah Omar.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's absolutely clear now that his Mullah Omar's successor, Mullah Akhtar Mansoor, has not been able to win over the complete confidence of all the factions and shuras within the Taliban. There were rumors just a couple of weeks ago that there had been an assassination attempt on his life. So that absolutely kind of reiterates the point that the Taliban themselves are fractious and divided. But what attacks like the offensive in Sangin do is that they enable them to put forward at least an image of unity on top. Right. So as long as they're succeeding on the battlefield, they're able to keep going forward.
But Omar, if the Taliban itself is fractured, does that mean that you could essentially have one part of the Taliban engaging in peace talks and other members of the Taliban still fighting on the ground?
Yes, what the fracturing within the Taliban means that there is essentially a limited window of opportunity to pursue peace talks with anyone who's in control of a bulk of the organization. If we continue to see further splintering, and we already know that some commanders in the field have changed and switched their loyalties to the Islamic State, especially in the eastern provinces of Afghanistan, it will be much harder to have any kind of peace talks if you have several different stakeholders in place rather than one or two.